Chapter 10 The Return to Lunsaro. When the time had come for Artemis to return to her queendom, she took Identhi along with her to keep her company, as she knew her mother, Queen Paxura, would not take too kindly to having heard her daughter was in the land of the Sorcerers. But with Identhio to keep her company and being good friends, she felt less anxiety with her around. While in the air on her Royal Concordia X-170, she was enjoying some peaceful times with Identhio at 40,000 feet, super cruising at Mach 2 across the vast ocean below, towards her queendom while being escorted by the best of the Royal Air Force pilots. Identhio then said to Artemis while drinking a glass of orange juice, "It was very kind of you to invite me to your queendom and allow me to ride with you on your royal transport. It's not every day I get to fly first class and be treated like royalty." Artemis then replies with a cheerful tone, "You're welcome, dear friend, and though you are not nobility by Celanese standards, your heart is far more noble than a lot of them. I trust you won't be trouble in the royal court, and if I run into any problems, I always have you to talk to." Identhio then inquires, "What about your family? Can you talk to them about your troubles if you have any?" Artemis then gives out a sad sigh and says, "I wish I was like that, but that's not how the lives of the Celanese nobles were destined to be." Identhio then huffs, "Why not? Isn't a family's duty to take care of each other? Isn't a family supposed to love each other and support each other through hard times?" Artemis then responds, "Not really. Piety to the goddesses puts itself before family bonds, and that service to the goddesses and our matriarchs and society comes first, then the individual." Identhio then stumbles on her words, but then musters up the strength to suggest, "But how could someone be so pious if a choice is never made for the individual but for the collective? I could be wrong because of my Amorian bias, but how can a collective ever have any meaning if the individuals that make up the collective never make any choices for themselves?" Artemis then shrugs and shakes her head and responds, "I don't know. I do not know yet all the things Vertok, and therefore not qualified to answer such theological questions. Perhaps the High Priestess of the Vertok Temple can give you a better answer than I can." Identhio then says to Artemis, "But I want to know what you think. I care about you, and I think you should think for yourself. After all, you're going to lead your queendom someday, aren't you?" Artemis then taps her fingers on a tea table and replies, "Yes, but I first must be coronated as the next speaker of Luna and have the spirit of the goddess Luna within me first before I can fully rule my own queendom." Identhio then asks Artemis, "Then who rules your queendom then? Is it Luna who rules your queendom, or is it you?" Artemis then, overloaded with Identhio's question, replies, "I know not the answer to what you ask me. I'm sorry. I have to consult the High Priestess of the temple in order to answer your questions. We can go together if you'd like." Identhio then gives a sheepish grin. "Thanks, but I'm just trying to understand your queendom's culture. Understanding others is something that is ingrained in all of us Amorian girls, and I don't want to come off as rude or judgmental. I've never been to your queendom before, and I wouldn't want to needlessly offend anyone with my ignorance." Artemis then puts her hand on Identhio's shoulder and assures her, "With someone as lovely as yourself, they'd have to be pretty heartless to hate you. And even though you don't have any Celanese blood, whoever is your enemy is my enemy, and the enemy of the Mother Luna herself." Then the fastened seatbelt light turned on as Artemis and Identhio buckled up for final approach towards New Lunsaro International Airport. Then while in her seat, Identhio asked, "Are there any final things I should know before I enter your queendom?" "Not that I know of. When in Lunsaro, do as the Lunsarans do. Likewise with Euphrasia, Amazonia, Aquarius, Miquan, and Caroline. But as a last thing, don't bring any weapons into the royal court, as such choices dishonor the authority of the Moonlight Maidens. Unless your name is Vixarina Lunsar, who carries her gun everywhere she goes." "Well, you don't have to worry about me then. I don't have any weapons of my own, and I doubt I could use any. like any Amoran girl. I never liked guns, and I would probably never own one in my life. Well, they're not for everyone, with you almost being the exact opposite of Apollyon, who thinks everyone should own a gun and at least 25 bullets. Anyways, I'm very happy you chose to join me on my return to my queendom. It's not very often I have someone to accompany on my own journeys, apart from my dreaded half-brother Apollyon from time to time. The wheels of the plane then touch the ground and taxis to the royal hangar where the pilots and flight attendants get out to stretch their legs and get some food from the royal kitchen. However, when Artemis stepped out of the plane, her mother, Speaker of Luna, Queen Paxua, slammed the bottom of her scepter on the ground and shouted, "You come right here, right now, missy. When you get inside, you and I are going to have a sweet talk about what you did this past weekend." Gentle then shrieked as she hides behind Artemis as Queen Paxua commands in a more cordial tone, "Not you, fair maiden. You are free to go. But you, Artemis, are coming with me." The royal guard then escorts Artemis as Edenthiel complains, "Free to go? Miss Artemis asked me to accompany her on her return during her time here. Is this any way to treat a guest who is your daughter's best friend and from another kingdom?" Paxua then commands her royal guard to stop escorting Artemis and answers Edenthiel, "Then pardon me, fair maiden. If you indeed are Artemis's consort while she is here, then I ought to make a formal apology and an arrangement for your stay while in my palace. But for why I have called Artemis to return to my above noble house, that is purely a matter between speaker and heir." Then Speaker of Luna, Queen Paxua, signaled for her royal guard to make a place for Edenthiel and take her to her room. Meanwhile, Paxua dragged Artemis to her private chambers of Lunsaro Palace, where she huffed and asked sternly to her daughter Artemis, "Do you know why I have ordered you to return to your queendom?" Artemis then sighs, "It's because I went to Zulsara and brought a princess from another kingdom in harm's way and spent some quality time with my annoying brother." "You're right on the first indictment of yourself, but to add 2 more indictments against yourself only infuriates me more. Do you not care that Zulsara is our enemy, and that putting a princess from another kingdom into harm's way only puts our queendom into more jeopardy, and that you have no brother?" "I am very aware of Zulsara, but why must we continue to hold on to feelings of hatred towards each other 140 years later? The war to end all wars ended 140 years ago. I doubt anyone is even alive from that time period to remember in Zulsara." Paxua then only grows angrier and responds, "It's because you have too much of your father in you, and you are the only heir to the throne and will not be responsible for the future of this queendom. And though the Moonlight Maidens do not know it, your Zulsuran father makes you half Zulsuran, and if such knowledge went public, there would be a civil war far worse than any crusade the Zulsurans have ever brought against us. And though the goddess Luna has blessed me greatly with your being, the demon of Solara has brought a curse upon this land with your father's Zulsuran blood. If you side with your half-Zulsuran heritage, you will damn this queendom with your refusal to accept your responsibility as the next speaker of Luna. Do you not understand that the end of our divine lineage will destroy this queendom and give Zulsurans the final victory they so desperately desire? Perhaps if you spend more time in your queendom, you would understand your foremothers have fought to keep safe from the Zulsurans and the Christians, who seek to destroy everything we hold dear, and even so far as Mother Luna herself." Artemis then stood in front of her mother with the shame as her mother made her final word, saying, "I have nothing more to say to you other than you will stay within the borders of this queendom until I say otherwise. And don't you try to go to Miquon or Caroline either. If you do, I'll make you work as a slave on a plantation until you reject your ties to your disowned Christian cousin Vixarina and American upbringing. You are Selenice, and a daughter of Luna, not an American Christian who only exists to give Luna power over a sorcerer. Meanwhile, in the royal tea parlor of Lunsaro Palace, Edenthiel was enjoying a cup of fine black tea with 2 cubes of sugar, as one of the Moonlight Maidens, Vixarina Lunsaro, asked, "Mind if I take a seat here? I'd hate to see someone drink tea all by herself." Edenthiel then motioned for Vixarina to sit down as she put her lever-action brass-engraved Henry 4570 on the table, facing away from herself and Edenthiel. Then Vixarina said to Edenthiel, "I don't believe I've seen you around these parts before. Are you a new member of the palace, or just visiting someone while you're here?" Edenthiel then said in a sad tone, "I came along with Artemis to keep her company while she stays here in your queendom, but I'm growing concerned that she might be unhappy, and I don't want her to be that way." "I don't want her to be that way either, and being her cousin means she's family. It's just too bad she got unlucky to be born in Poxo as her mother. Otherwise, I would take her under my wing and let her be herself. She's really not a mean girl when you get to know her, and it's just that she's been really stressed out right now with all that's going on in her life. It's not easy being a princess and being forced to live a certain life you don't want to, whereas the common folk in my province can do almost anything they want. I almost makes me wish I were just like the rest of us in a way, if I didn't already have responsibilities to attend to as the only elected Moonlight Maiden on the royal court." "So, what does that mean, you make you on the royal court, or in your province?" "I guess you could say that makes me like the governor-president of my province, while the rest of the Lunar Queendom seems to be in the same field as all the other noble houses. So, if this royal tea parlor is where only nobles are allowed, does that make you a noble from another kingdom or an ambassador?" Edenthiel then blushes and said, Quite the contrary. I'm actually quite the regular girl in my own kingdom, and I've just known Artemis for so long because I've worked with her raising some same princess for some quiet time. I'm sorry if I'm intruding on a place of royalty." "Well, it doesn't matter to me whether you're royalty or not. I gave him my Lunsaro royal status years ago when I chose to live the life like the rest of us in Caroline, where royalty means nothing. And if I'm being honest here, the regular people of Caroline are far more noble in character than the lot of Moonlight Maidens, other than Miku of McQuan. But then again, it's quite the predicament having to serve 2 masters when you love the Caroline people and hate the Vertok theocracy." "But aren't you a Vertok practitioner yourself? Isn't your queendom a Vertok queendom?" Vixarina then gives an annoyed expression. "It only seems that way because the rules make it appear that way with their authoritarian rule. In reality, as far as I know, with my home state of Caroline, we're almost entirely Christian and completely fed up with the way the Moonlight Maidens have neglected our grievances and the important role we play in this queendom's survival. If it were not for us in Caroline and half of Mequon, there wouldn't even be a Lunar Queendom today. Then they tax the life out of my province without any meaningful representation, as I am the only one Moonlight Maiden out of 6, and then the other nobles treat my people like second-class citizens." "Now you're starting to sound like my American neighbors on the 4th of July, and I wouldn't be surprised if you started saying, 'We hold these truths to be self-evident.'" Vixarina then chuckled and said, "It's funny you'd say that. Some protest groups are actually quoting the American Declaration of Independence and waving old Caroline Republic battle flags with Betsy Ross, much to the dismay of the many nobles besides McQuan. Unlike other provinces, McQuan is actually pretty nice, although I still think Caroline is better." But who cares what other nobles think anyway? When in my province, the protesters have every right to freely speak their mind. And if I'm being honest here, I'd much rather see Betsy Ross than the Zolcer and Battle Flag, after Zolcer that betrayed us and sold us out to the Vertok Queendom. Contrary, those Americans have greatly improved our ability to defend ourselves if a Vertok invasion were to ever happen. Some have even said they would join the side of Carolina as mercenaries if there was ever a revolution. So I take it you don't like this queendom very much? Not entirely. Things could be much worse like the province of Amazonia, with their political prisons and elitist province of Lunsaro, with their exploitation of the regular folk. But luckily for me and my people, we don't live there and would fight tooth and nail to keep it that way. If they ever try to invade my province and take away our rights, they'll mean a bloody hell like they've never seen before. But then again, I also recognize that not all Lunsaran and Amazonian people are bad people, but good people indoctrinated into doing the wrong things. For example, Artemis isn't a bad person so much as she has been indoctrinated to believe in the Vertok lies about our history and believing that Sorcerer is the biggest threat to this queendom, when in reality, it's the Vertok itself. I would be willing to bet that she knew the true history of this queendom, and read the greatest Celanese philosophers from the golden age of harmony, she would be a die-hard Christian in a heartbeat. Shortly after Artemis had left to return to the rest of Lunsaro Palace to find Edenthiel with her cousin Vixarina, the commander-in-chief, Umbriel Kigore, overheard Poxura's conversation with Artemis and confronted her with his hand on his holstered pistol and said, "I heard what you said about punishing Artemis, and if you actually make her a slave, I'll lead a revolution by tomorrow morning." Poxura then put her hand on the hilt of her sword as Umbriel kept his hand on his Celanese 8mm Magnum sidearm and said, "Draw that sword if you care about your life. I have the power to end it right here and right now if you try to kill me. But I know you won't do that. You have too much to lose with your daughter as the last heir to the throne, and I'd hate to see her lose her mother." Poxura then takes her hand off her sword and says to Umbriel, "Well, seeing that we're both in the same caste, that even things out now, doesn't it? I think I already know where this is going." Umbriel then takes his hand off his sidearm and says, "Then you tell me where you think this is going." Poxura then put her hand on her hips and stares into Umbriel's dark silver eyes and says, "I think you're trying to force Artemis to become a Christian like yourself, and then my entire queendom." Umbriel then crossed his arms and said, "Then you would be wrong. I don't believe in forcing anyone to believe anything. But if you don't put your moonlight maidens in order and start respecting the dignity of regular people, and especially those your religion deems a higher caste, me and you are going to have some problems you won't be able to walk away from. If I didn't have a religious obligation to love my enemies, I would have already taken over this queendom and done some pretty nasty things to the royal families and their loyalists." Poxura then crosses her arms and ankles under her heavy royal robe and says to Umbriel, "You in what army? I am the supreme leader of this queendom over my subjects, not you." Umbriel then laughs. "Ha ha! Well, I'd bring the entire Caroline population armed to the teeth. Everyone in Miquon who hates you. You being locked up in this palace all the time has left you out of touch with reality, hasn't it? Seeing how you completely disarmed your own population and given them reason to hate you once I rearmed them, you don't have a chance, even if you had the entire royal army at your disposal. And even if you did have the entire royal army at your disposal, and loyal to you, which you don't. Those people in Caroline and McQuan still hold all the cards. It wouldn't take them much effort to stop shipping food to your Vertok provinces and starve you all to death, when you can only grow food 4 months out of the year. You rely a lot on more McQuan and Caroline and the nymphs than they do on you. So it's time you start showing some respect and getting your Moonlight Maidens in order before shit hits the fan regarding them. And while Poxo was silenced in Umbriel's word barrage, Edenthiel was trying to cheer up Artemis as Vixera suggested. Why don't we all get headed to Caroline and get away from this political mess and enjoy ourselves? Wouldn't it do us all some good to take a vacation from politics and start living? Artemis then, with a hopeless expression, said to Vixarina, What will it matter if I endanger my life with hard labor by going to Caroline? Vixarina then lifts her finger like she's making a proclamation and says, Then it's better we have dangerous liberty than peaceful slavery, for those who will sacrifice liberty for a little temporary safety will end up with neither. Then Vixarina, Artemis, and Edenthiel get on a plane and travel to Vixarina's plantation house in Caroline.